Hello, everyone. My name is Christine, and I'm the host here at the Hungarian Heritage Podcast, the show where we connect your modern life to your Hungarian heritage by building bridges and connecting the circles of Hungarians around us. This podcast is a place where everyone is welcome, where you don't even need to be Hungarian or speak Hungarian to join in on the fun. Each week, we will talk about all the things that we love about Hungary and Hungarian people. So, if you're looking to make that first connection to your Hungarian heritage, or you're looking to dive deeper, then this is the place to be. Thanks for joining us today. This episode of the Hungarian Heritage Podcast is the first in a 3-part series of guests who are all of Hungarian descent, that were all born in the United States, but have 3 very different experiences about being a Hungarian American. In this series, we touch upon what their Hungarian connection has been throughout their lives so far, how they've stayed connected with their Hungarian heritage, and what that looks like for all of them going forward. In this first episode of the series, you will hear from Bianca Fabian, a first-generation Hungarian with 2 Hungarian parents. You will hear how she went through all the typical Hungarian things, including attending Hungarian school as a kid, her language learning experience, as well as what her hopes and concerns are for herself and her future children regarding maintaining her Hungarian heritage. You will also get a sneak peek or a sneak listen to something fun that will be coming up in the near future. I would like to welcome Bianca Fabian to the podcast today. And we're going to be discussing 3 very important topics in relation to her Hungarian heritage. And those are what it's like being a firstborn Hungarian in the United States, Bianca's experience growing up in a Hungarian community, and how life progresses, it's more challenging to maintain the close Hungarian connections for not only herself, but for her future children as well. Welcome, Bianca. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, same here. Same here. I think your story is unique because people will be able to draw a lot of information about what it was like being firstborn, but really being firstborn immersed in a Hungarian community. So tell us a little bit about what your life was like as a little kid. You know, did you speak Hungarian as your first language and be exposed to English later in school? Like, tell us all about that experience.
Well, there's a lot to unpack here. So, being first generation and just being raised by immigrant parents in any circumstance, it comes with its challenges and also a lot of advantages, which aren't as evident or easy to realize up front or understand in general, even now. And a lot of them just kind of go hand in hand. So I think growing up, and not just me, but anyone within an immigrant family, we're exposed to different perspectives and different traditions and values. And then those become the things that we want to rebel or resist as well. Right?
Sure.
I know I did. And then part of that too is also like the significant, in a lot of cases, like generational differences. You know, our parents or family members were brought up differently. And then we're here thrown into America or born here.
Right.
Like do life.
Yeah.
And then the standards for things like work ethic or like what is a good life or what's a good person or what's success look like. It all varies based on not even your culture, but like each family member's mood or what have you. It can be really confusing. So, and then the other thing I think is important to mention is that a lot of immigrant parents, and I think people can relate, they don't care what the norm is or like how America or Americans do it. They do not care. They still like have their idea of these things. And like, that's what it is. So then you're going to have these inevitable clashes, which definitely happened in my household, and just living within these 2 cultures simultaneously, it's going to happen. So like the best way maybe I can describe it is like feeling like I was on like a balance beam. And some days I was like leaning this way, other days maybe more this way, but I felt like I was always trying to acclimate to both the Hungarian and American side, and like learning from both. So feel like those are like those two identities are like a major defining feature of my personality. And I just kind of was like, I don't know which side to pick. Do I have to pick a side?
No. Yeah. I don't think you have to pick a side, but I think you made a very important point is that, it's not just Hungarian families, it's really any immigrant family. They go through a lot of the same things. They want to be in the United States for opportunities and really instill in their children ideas from the homeland, ideas about their heritage and culture, because that's what they know and they love, because they took a big risk coming here. So, that feels like home for them. And they want to make sure that they instill that in their children. But yet you're also, and other people are thrown into the balancing act of you want to maintain that, or I don't want to say you're forced, because I don't think you're forced. I think it's just part of life. You just learn from your family.
There's some force too.
Well, it's a parent's duty, I guess, too.
Yeah.
Teach your children. But like the balancing act of now you're in the United States and you're like living life and you're making friends in school, and they might not be Hungarian. They might be Italian or Greek or Russian or whatever, kids you're meeting in school. They're also trying to maintain their home life with their culture. So it's interesting because you are on a balance beam essentially, or I guess a seesaw. One day you're a little bit more Hungarian, next day you're a little bit more American. And maybe our parents didn't realize that they put us on that seesaw, you more so than myself, because you were really immersed into the community. So, but as an adult, I'm sure you look back on certain things, which we'll touch upon as we continue talking. But tell us, language wise, was Hungarian your first language, like at home? And then tell us how that worked for you.
People have always asked me that question. And I never can answer what they asked me, like which language I spoke first. And I don't know.
Okay.
As long as I can remember, I've spoken both. My parents both spoke English, but at home we never spoke English. Like even now, like I still talk to my mother in Hungarian. We text in Hungarian. Like we don't really speak English. We've only started speaking it to each other more because now that I'm married to non-Hungarian, we have to speak English at things. Right?
Sure.
But I think my like first exposure to English was definitely before school years. I remember like saying hi to neighbors, or like if we went to the grocery store, I talked to people. So they both felt, I don't know, I think I've spoke both my whole life.
Right. But you spoke Hungarian a lot at home, which I think is common with a lot of immigrant families. You want to maintain the language, and they speak to their children at home to really solidify the language learning, because they know you're going to get it.
And it's not an easy language either. So if that wasn't the case now, I mean, my Hungarian's not even that great anymore, because if you don't use it, you lose it, right? It's probably elementary level at this point. But had that not been like my sort of specific upbringing, it would probably even be just worse at this point. So
well, it's good that you have that opportunity, that like with your mom, like you have that opportunity to practice because, that's important. Like you said, you married a non-Hungarian. So your opportunities are a little bit less now to speak it on a daily basis.
Yeah. It feels like every day is just like more challenges set up for that side of me to be put into play or to come out, I guess. Like it's kind of just there, like waiting, maybe collecting dust sometimes.
It has to be more intentional now,
Yeah. Like you really have to like go out and seek it. And then things like podcasts or shows or music. And those are like the ways I try to maintain connection to just the culture, but also the hearing the language, like more frequently than I do now.
Right. It's funny because, people who are trying to learn a new language will use music, podcasts, television shows, movies to learn the language. And you're doing the reverse. You're doing it to maintain your language, which is clever.
All languages evolve too. So like there's new ways to say things or slang or whatever. It's like, it's still also learning where I understand what they're saying. That's another bizarre thing. I can understand it, but I can't tell you what that sentence means because it's just the way they use the words or they add like the order of it, I'm like, is this a new way to like say that you're angry or something? Like, it's mind blowing. It's such a complicated language.
I think, like you said, language evolves. Whereas my experience listening to the Hungarians around me, because I wasn't taught to speak, but that was the Americanization of my generation. Once you were here, you Americanized. It definitely sounds two things: less formal and faster than it used to. You know, listening to my family speak, it was very slow and it was a rhythm, almost sing-songy. You know, look at when I listened to my grandmother and her lady friends speaking. So, and now when I'm around Hungarians, it's 100 miles an hour. But I think that's just, you know, that's just like current life now. I think people speak very quickly.
It feels more aggressive, or just like there's like a lot of like emotion, but like to get out. And it does sound like musical, the way you described it. And that's how I remember hearing a lot of it. And then there's like the flip side of it where it's like you just have to get it all out, and but everything has to be enunciated and every word is said perfectly. And it takes them 20 minutes to describe like one feeling because they have to be, it's still very poetic. But it's the delivery.
I think the aggressiveness might come from, I think the aggressiveness might come from the fact that the urge to speak quicker, and it's very hard to speak quicker when the words are so long and there's so many like beginnings and endings. You know, so it probably feels like such a rushed experience now for people speaking in this quick world we live in.
I thought that was another interesting language. Like when I go to Hungary and speak Hungarian, I'd be very straightforward. I like, yes, I'm hungry, or hi, how are you? That's it. I didn't like add any other like words that were kind of unnecessary, because I guess in English, it's a lot more straightforward. But when you translate what they're even saying, it's like, wait, what? Like,
right. Well, you know, it evolves, right? I know.
Yeah. So it could come off as like all rude or even like unintelligent, or like people were like, oh, you know, she's American. It's fine. Like she's not, she has manners. She just like, that's how she expresses it.
Right.
But that was always like said to me like, oh, I can't believe you didn't do the normal sort of like pleasantries or like the way you speak to elders. Like I never did that stuff. I didn't want to. I knew what to do, but I didn't like it. I was like, it feels weird. I don't know.
Right.
But that was always like, oh yeah, just she's American. That's how it is.
Well, I mean, you mentioned also speaking like in Hungary. I have heard, and I've been told by a few people that when you at least try, because if you say that you're elementary, I am like at the baby stage. So just trying to speak when you're in Hungary, they appreciate it. And like you see their faces light up that you're attempting. So I'm sure that your speaking was very welcomed when you were speaking there, because I'm sure you speak a lot better than you think you do.
Well, I have last time I was in Hungary last summer, I wanted to order a Coke Zero at the restaurant. I said Coke Nulla. Nulla means zero in Hungarian.
Right.
And she was like, you mean Coke Zero? I'm like, oh, yes, I was just trying to say it the right way. But she looked at me like I was the crazy one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you were saying it properly according to the brand.
Yeah.
So that's funny, you know? Oh my goodness.
To the point of like, you try, but then I tried a little too hard, I guess.
You were too specific.
And they were like, what?
Well, you got the drink, so at least it was successful. Yeah. You acquired it.
Yeah.
So. As far as language, like, did you have a lot of friends? I know you were in a community, but when you were going to school, did you have Hungarian friends there as well?
So yeah, I went to Hungarian schools every Sunday morning. Well, all day Sunday. I did school, and like it was St. Stephen's in Manhattan, and also the Hungarian house. They're all like right next to each other. So they had a school, and then they had a lot of programming. So I had friends there because everyone in my class was Hungarian, right? And then a lot of those friends they were in my life because our families were friends or they knew each other.
Okay.
And I did have one Hungarian friend in my neighborhood, like a couple of blocks away, but that was short-lived because a lot of the sort of the case with Hungarian friends, not just for me, but like my parents too. Like
Right.
they'd cycle through, they'd come here and then they'd eventually decide to move back and take their families, or like it was, no one stayed like super long term.
Right.
And then the dynamics were also interesting because, and it's probably the case a lot of like different cultures and communities, like every person had like the professional and personal lines were blurred. So like the friend that lived near me, his stepmom was my piano teacher and his dad was our family dentist.
Right.
My dad fixed everyone's cars. He was a mechanic. So everyone
right.
like had these connections. So sometimes that meant like it could be awkward. Like if, we're hanging out or like over to dinner or something, then they're going to talk about like, so when's my car going to be out of the shop, or like,
right.
now, as an adult, I can understand that that could be like a weird dynamic, like when your friendships are based on also like service and
right.
like that kind of background. But yeah, I really didn't have that many friends. The ones I did like kind of moved away, or I had friends in school that were like a lot younger than me. Like we didn't really, like we didn't have that much in common because that's a big age gap. So, or it was just, they were there because like our parents were friends. So I was like, okay, do you like, I don't know, video games? Cool. Like,
let's just make this play date work with our parents that are here. Yeah.
So none of the connections were like lifelong. I only can tell you maybe like where one or two of those people are now. Like,
okay,
we really don't maintain much of a relationship. It's kind of sad because I would like to have, yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, especially because, as a firstborn, you're in this community, and whether you're going to like your public school with your friends, you're going to, Saturday, sometimes it's on Saturday, some places have it on Sunday, like yourself. And you're immersed with these people and you see them all the time, and they do become a connection for you. But life then moves on to like where you are now. You're married and you moved away, right? So it's like the circles start to get a little bit bigger and you're not as close. So you're not attending school anymore. But while you were there, let's talk about a little bit while you were there before we move forward. What are some of the things that you were involved in Hungarian school?
Well, they had so many things and activities and just things going on. So there were a lot of dances and plays and like different holiday events. So like I would do, like they would do like costume Halloween parties. So like I would do that in normal school and then go there and we'd do a different variation of that there. Right. Concerts. There was a huge emphasis, not just with school, just in general, at least like with me, and like with my parents, like emphasizing like creativity. So like you had to have some kind of talent. You didn't come here to not get good at something. Right. And that like in relation to like art or music. So something like my mom wanted me to become a piano player. That's what she wanted when she was a kid. And then like kind of passing that down to me. Right. Got to try all of these different things. I didn't become Beethoven, but I did learn like a little bit of so many different things because of that exposure and that like just like encouragement to do it. And also within the school, like a lot of that mindset and philosophy was shared by the other Hungarians. So like there was a piano there. Like you know, you had to do something that was creative or musical or, something within art. So those were really fun. And I enjoyed doing a lot of that stuff. And then the holidays, Christmas celebrations are a whole other like beast.
Yeah, they're like next level between the dance, the food, the music, right?
It was a lot of fun for sure.
Right. That's great. I mean, other than the fact that you had to go on a Sunday and not sleep in and not see your school friends because you had to go to your Hungarian school.
At six days of school instead of 5. So I was like, I'm tired. And like going to Hungarian school, learning our alphabet where there are, I think, 44 letters. It's double the size of.
It's like, why are there so many A's, right?
I'm like, my head is spinning. And I'm learning like the other out, like this is too much.
Yeah. Like, did you have any crossover ever, like when you were really young, like, and you're going to like American school where you're like, wait, there's like 7 more A's I need to tell you about?
No, I would look at like the chalkboard with the alphabet, like banner. And I'd be like, well, I'll imagine all the Hungarian like letters or groups of letters that come in between them. But no one could understand like that stuff that would be going through my, like, I can't explain it to you.
Right.
It's like haunting you everywhere you go.
Yeah. It's funny because I think the difference, and, I'm a little nerdy when it comes to like English and language and stuff. I think Hungarians have different, like, say, A's, because those are the different sounds the A's make. And we just have one letter A, but we learn the different sounds the A makes with the wording, and the spelling and what other words are next to it. So like we do have all those sounds. We just don't have different letters with accent marks and different punctuation above it. So
just make it complicated.
Exactly.
And then when you try to spell out a word, there's at least 30 of those letters are being used minimum.
Exactly. So you have fond memories of, even though you had to get up early, you have fond memories of that experience of going to Hungarian school, even though, you had to wake up and you might not have maintained some of those connections. Because I don't want to say they were forced, but they were what they were. They were connections that your parents put you with, and you don't always maintain those going forward. But I don't think you always maintain your, say, elementary or middle school friends from an American school either. So it's the same situation. But the difference is that you're trying to hang on to a heritage, whereas in, going to American school, you're just, you're there for learning. You learn about American history, but it's not like you're trying to hang on to a specific heritage, like as an immigrant family or as you go forward. So you married a non-Hungarian. I mean, I'm sure that he loves being married to a Hungarian woman. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I have all my friends are non-Hungarian. So we were introduced by a mutual friend of ours. He's half Trinidadian, half Irish. So he's an interesting mix. So I thought when I first saw him that he was like Greek or something European. He's like dark hair, but like light skin. So I was like, maybe you're probably European. I don't know. But then turns out that's sort of his mix. And then I met his family and they're all of like Indian descent. So first of all, he has a big mix, like different religions. His grandparents one was Hindu, one was Christian, like everyone's believing in something different. So they always come together and pretty much celebrate just about everything. And it was funny because like one of the first times maybe it was Thanksgiving. I don't know, it was like our first family function that I went to. I was in the kitchen, like getting a plate of food, and they had some kind of stew. And I served myself and I saw chicken feet and I took it because I love chicken feet. That's like a weird thing. Like Hungarian cook every part of the animal. That's normal. Like, and that was like one of my favorite parts to eat. It's very unusual to most people that aren't used to it. But then I'm like eating whatever. And then I hear talking like, what happened to the feet? You were supposed to hide them. Like they didn't want me to see and get like scared or like, think it was unusual. And they were also saving it for like a family member that actually liked them because no one even likes that. It's like very select few. I ended up eating them and they're like, oh, okay. Like, you're fine then.
Yeah. So you were like, probably immediately accepted into that family that day, right?
Yeah. I mean, he'll tell you there are a lot of great things about being married to Hungarian, a lot of challenges too. Like every time we see my mom or any, she gives us a gift for anything, it's always food based. So that's chocolate, it's sausage. There's always Hungarian sausage in our house.
Not a bad thing.
And that's really hard.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing. But when you're trying to like live a healthier lifestyle, maybe, or go on a diet, it doesn't work.
No such word.
They don't understand the meaning of the word diet. It's like, oh, you're on a diet. Let me just eat this chocolate. It's
right. Yeah. It's so good. Exactly.
Yeah.
I know. That's so funny. Yeah. There's definitely no word for diet. I'm sure there's a word for diet, but I don't think they comprehend that whatsoever.
Yeah, no, they're offended by that word. Because so much of our food is like meat and dairy and heavy and all delicious things. But and also, I mean, food is just such a big part of the culture, and not just like the types of cuisine, but the emotional like attachments to them. And a lot of Hungarians and probably a lot of different cultures, they show their love by feeding you or like serving you, and then if you don't finish it, that's offensive.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. And also here, just take some more, like putting the extra spoonful on your plate when
Yeah.
you
It's
sit.
like, oh, your plate's running low. Let me top it off.
Yeah.
And every meal is an extended amount of time. There's no like quick breakfast or like a bite for lunch or anything. It's a commitment, a time commitment, an emotional commitment. You have to have the conversation.
Right.
There's always going to be some kind of drama being discussed. And you're having 3 to 6 courses at every meal. And it's like,
Food's definitely important for sure. And having enough food,
yeah,
on your plate. And
yeah,
it probably makes, your mom feel good when she can do that, because it just brings
yeah,
her back to when you were younger, just to be able to feed you.
yeah,
So
yeah.
did your husband like all of the Hungarian food that your mom serves?
There's a lot of things like certain sausages that
Okay.
he's tried, and like I was like, trust me, it's gonna be good. Just give it a
Right.
try. Or things like we put like horseradish, though that's one thing he discovered
Yeah.
that he loves because my mom and her husband make it
Yeah.
and they always give it to us. And he was like, ew, what do you do with that? I'm like, trust me, you're gonna
You just
like
just dunk it
this.
in. It'll be
Like
good.
literally put it on everything. Like things like that he would have never maybe ever have tried, let alone thought to have tried. And then there's things that I thought he would love, like goulash or just like our regular staples, and he doesn't
Right.
really like them. He doesn't like paprika, like as a
Oh,
spice,
wow. Wow.
which is I'm like that's the base for
Yeah.
everything.
That's like a
He
Hungarian
definitely,
travesty to not like
yeah.
paprika,
So he
right?
doesn't like any stew that has that flavoring, which is like every Hungarian
Yeah.
stew, but he likes a lot of other like because I
Yeah.
mean, it's fried, it's cheesy, it's meat wrapped in more meat.
Exactly.
Can't really resist it, even if you try.
How about cabbage
Um,
dishes? Does he like, because that's huge too.
Yeah. So actually, I recently had gone out to eat with my mom. I brought home some pickled cabbage and sauerkraut,
Hmm.
like a mix of, or
Right.
everything's pickled too. And he was eating like the food, like the chicken or whatever. And then he like ate around. And then he got a little taste of the cabbage. He didn't want it. And then he ate the whole thing. It's delicious together.
Well, it's a new experience, I guess. If you don't like
Yeah.
paprika, it's not necessarily a deal breaker, because there are other foods that you can eat, especially like cabbage dishes and, like you mentioned, fried dough, langosh, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of good things to eat, even if you don't like paprika.
For sure. I'm like, there's no way you're not gonna like a stew,
Right.
beef or chicken, like it at all. And those are like my favorite dishes. So I'm
I know.
and try to force it on. Like,
He doesn't like chicken paprikash then, right?
no, no.
Wow.
He'll
Wow.
taste it every time
Okay.
or something, but he's still like, no, like still a hard no.
Yeah, listen, I don't eat any fish, so I get it. It's a hard no for me every time, and people don't understand it. So if you just don't like it, you don't like it. It's
Yeah.
just,
And there's dishes I have an aversion to also, like fish
Sure.
or stew and like all these, like, I'm like, that's just no. Or like the gelatinous things I'm not a fan of. And there's a lot
Oh,
of
yeah,
onions.
like, yeah. So like, you don't like, does your mom make that? What is that called?
That's like her favorite. That's like
Oh,
maybe
what is
why I don't even like it, because I watch her just like constantly eat stuff like that. And I'm like, oh,
I
and it's
totally
not
forgot what that was called. What is that called? I'm blanking. Cochina.
Cochanya. Oof.
I think I like the jellied part, which is weird. But then the meat kind of freaked me out. So, but then, it's been a long time. Let's talk about this stage of your life now, because you were immersed, you were in it to win it, learning the language in the community, friends on the weekend, and now you don't live near that community anymore. Is that correct?
I mean, I'm still here. I was raised in New York City, in Queens. I still live in
Okay.
Queens, but like I really am removed from that community because I don't have
Right.
any Hungarian connections. I only talk to my like mother, basically.
Right. That's a challenge then.
Yeah. And I feel like there have been times where like I've looked up this Hungarian school I went to. I'm like, what do they have going on now? Like
Right.
maybe there's like a mixer or something, like an event I can like buy tickets to. I don't know. Like,
Right.
I've been feeling like more of a need, like I want to do that more. But when I
Right.
try to discover or like look for ways to make connections, it feels like there's just like not that many options. And I don't know if I'm just not looking in the right places. but it feels like a lot more just limited as far as like
Right.
ways to maintain or build new connections with people, not just in my area, but anywhere really. Like,
Right. So it's funny because you probably had this little bit of time that elapsed from when you stopped going to Hungarian school, which I imagine is eighth grade ish, maybe early high school.
it was earlier than I can't remember
Okay.
exactly when, maybe like sixth grade or a little, it
Right.
was,
So middle school. And you were
yeah.
probably like, yes, I can sleep in on a Sunday. And you probably kept that in your rear view mirror and you were, just moving on with your life, being
Mhm.
happy, doing all the things that a preteen, teenager, 20 something.
Huh.
And now you're like, wait, whoa, I think I might miss a little bit of that. But I
Yeah.
think that's just a different stage of life. You were, when you were there, you were like, yeah, this is great, but it is annoying. And you're like, oh, I'm glad to be free of it for a little while. But now you're looking for that connection to reconnect, especially for like the age group, like
Yeah.
once you leave that Hungarian community. So if you don't marry a Hungarian or live in the vicinity of other Hungarians, I think there are a lot of people, which was one of the catalysts for this podcast, is making connections. And you have a connection even though it's not as tight as it used to be. Some people are looking for the connection who've never been connected, who don't live near any Hungarian communities, to even attend a yearly festival. It's like too far away, or, there are no restaurants in the area. I mean, this is a big country. So I think this is like the gap that we're looking to talk about, because they do a great job with kids and immersing them into it. And I think all the Hungarian communities do a great job for maybe the older generation who are going to the Hungarian clubs and, joining like the little festivals and, there's little Hungarian pockets all over the US and Canada.
Yeah.
But what about the in-betweeners, like what about people
Yeah.
that don't live near that community anymore or want a little bit more? And I think that's what we're looking to create here, but also maybe create for other people as well. And, maybe create some type of meetup going forward, because maybe that's what's needed. Maybe it's going to take someone in your generation, maybe a little bit in my generation too, who have two very different experiences of being firstborn, but also crave the same thing. I think maybe that's what we need to do. We need to create some meetup and get it started, because I think it would be welcomed by many, and I don't think it would be offensive to anyone either, because we're just trying to continue to support these communities that are, but we're like the in-betweeners. I think I just made up that word for us. But like we're the in-betweener Hungarians,
Yeah.
that aren't connected necessarily by vicinity or language, and people are craving that. So tell me when you realized that it was going to be a challenge for you to maintain a connection, because it's great to have the idea to create this, to fill this gap. But when did you realize that for yourself? Like, oh, maybe I really want to be part of this or create something for this.
I think it was more, I was just happy, like before you said like, oh, finished up school, like there's freedom to just do whatever else now. So I was basically focused on being an American, right?
Right.
But I still had my home life and like stuff here and there, or like options. Like if my parents were going to some kind of Hungarian event, they'd be like, we're going, do you want to go? I'd be like, no.
PTSD there, I'm sure, right?
Yeah. And then my dad passed away when I was in high school. I was about 17. So that's when I started thinking about a lot of different things. And like, that's when I felt like I lost a big piece of,
Right.
obviously it was a big loss, but like a piece of that part of me, like, I don't know, it felt like even less Hungarian. I don't know how to describe it, but that's sort of what comes to mind at the moment.
Right. I understand.
So it was just like less of that and less Hungarians that we knew. Eventually it was like none. And then we kind of like lived life, and I don't know, it's just like connecting to those within your community or within our shared culture. That's what helps maintain some of that. And I felt like there was like no option to do it. So I was like, all right, I guess like that's it. Like,
right. I think you made a good point. Like as life goes on and, we lose people that are important to us, you do see like the gap opening wider for, that distance with connection. And you have to be intentional and say, hey, maybe I do want to be connected a little bit closer than I did maybe when I was a teenager, because you're, living an American life. And it's definitely something that I think a lot of people think about, but maybe just don't know where to look. And I think also too, now that you're married to a non-Hungarian, it creates a bigger distance between how are you going to keep your Hungarian culture and heritage in your children. That's a challenge. How have you thought about that?
I just always had assumed up until, I became an adult that they would just I'd raise any future children the way I was raised, like throw them in Hungarian school, send them out to Hungary to family, basically like my upbringing. And then at home, or like spend time with my parents, and they would get like all of those different like facets of Hungarian culture and different levels of it. And then I'd be able to offer maybe a different perspective on that. But now with like losing my dad, and then it's just my mom here. And now it's my grandparents are really old. Like, I don't know, they'll be around, whenever children come into the picture. And then I'm like, all right, so all of like my plan here is not going to work, because I'm going to have to try a little harder, because it's just not what it was for me. And how can I expect to have been that way after all of these years? But I think a big piece of it is going to be going there, like going to Hungary. My mom put me on a flight as soon as the doctors cleared me as an infant to fly. She really like made sure I spend as much time there as possible. Otherwise, I wouldn't have grown up the way I did and like understood or appreciated it probably in the way I do now. And if I didn't spend all that time there, I'd probably be very different, and I wouldn't maybe speak the language or be able to read and write and do all of that stuff. Because school was great, but I already went in there speaking Hungarian. I wasn't like, had I just spoken English, I don't think I would have actually learned Hungarian. I would have been like, there's no way. Like, I drop out immediately.
Well, I think that, going forward, you could employ some of the same tactics. Your children in the future, they're not going to have two parents that speak Hungarian, but there are options that moms and dads do, where the mom only speaks to the children in one language and the dad speaks to the children in another language. And that's a way that you can foster that connection. If that's something that you and your husband even want to do, as far as teaching.
We'll try it.
I'm sure there's like great Facebook groups and all these groups that, have more assistance than, just the suggestion that I'm giving you. But like your experience raising children to appreciate their Hungarian heritage is going to be a little different than your parents' experience, as, because you're the firstborn, like their experience, they had more opportunity to send you to Hungarian school, speak Hungarian at the dinner table. So you have more hurdles than they did. Their hurdles were coming to the US, and your hurdles are more of maintaining your Hungarian heritage and how you're going to do that with your children. But I think it's doable. I don't think it's like a deal breaker.
Yeah, no, it's just trying to find a way or ways to continue strengthening that part of my life and then passing it down. And just like the solution to any disconnections are creating more opportunities. So I think like what you were saying about a meetup and creating like that the network for the in-betweeners, or wherever we fit in, that's going to help with not just me, but anyone that feels like I don't want the culture to end with them. Because
I agree. Because it doesn't have to just be about getting together and eating stuffed cabbage and things like that, which is also a plus if we can do that. That's a plus. And it's not meant to, again, give any group that's younger or older than us and say that they're doing it wrong, because nobody's doing anything wrong. But we definitely need to create like an avenue for meetups, because just because you're fluent, and let's just say my daughter, she's not like, but she's also 25% Hungarian, and she has pride, she's a citizen of Hungary. which is a great talking point, by the way, too, which is, I think there's a lot of professionals like yourself out there that would be really interested in getting together and not just having stuffed cabbage, but to also just network with each other, almost like a sorority and fraternity, combined together of like this in-between group of people, because I think it would also be an asset to the older generations, because the older generations are getting older and we love them. But once all the people who speak fluently aren't around us anymore, now what? I mean, we know the culture is not going to die out. People keep coming, but like those original waves of immigration have dissipated.
Yeah. And you see that in, like, I remember there were so many Hungarian restaurants in New York City. We'd go to them and support whoever was running it. And now there are none. There's Hungarian items on menus at a Polish restaurant, or like Czechoslovakian, like mixed sort of like
European. Yeah.
But there's no, I mean, there are like a handful, but it's not like the kind of like scene or like place it used to be. They closed their doors because there's, I guess, less of a demand, or even some spots like the Langosh bar that opened in the West Village wasn't open for very long.
Right.
I mean, whatever. There's a lot of challenges when it just comes to being in the
opening any business
and not being succeeding, especially pandemic. And then I'm wondering, like, does that mean like one day the Hungarian house is gonna just close and sell the building, and then it's gonna be something else? Like, feels like the pieces of Hungarian culture, especially in New York, or at least what I'm familiar with here in the surrounding areas, like slowly but surely disappearing.
I think that's common in any part of like the US and Canada, and who knows, around the world as well. The communities, really, it's almost like when you throw a pebble into like a lake and you see the circles just keep getting wider and wider. I think that's just what it's like for any culture or heritage that comes to the US. Everybody moves to one town and, they're your neighbors and you're going to school together. And then slowly things close, things move on. And I think it has to be more intentional. And I think that's what our purpose is going to be. I think our purpose is to really make it intentional that we get this in-between group together and to be a force to be reckoned with in a positive way, to be a part of the community. Or there might be people, like I said, who have never really joined anything or attended anything. And there's a great interest there for learning. And I think, we can all help each other do that. And I think it's important. I think that's definitely something that we're going to work on together, because I believe it's needed.
And I think having that group, or like just finding friends or connections, like maybe that means people would be more inclined to like visit and or take the trip if they've been thinking about it.
Right.
Or go to different parts of the country they've never been to.
I agree. I feel like it's going to open up opportunities for people to take the risk, because I don't think that everyone is maybe confident enough to maybe attend something at a very, official Hungarian location, in fear of not speaking or not feeling welcome, because it's like the first time they're walking into something. And that's not to say that these places do that to people. I don't think that they do, but I think people in general are reserved to take the risk.
I mean, it's easier to do it with a friend or someone else. To show up alone. And if you show up to a Hungarian event, you're going to get question. People are going to talk to you. There's no way you can kind of like coast through it and just observe. And sometimes that's what you want to do, especially if you're alone. And it's not easy to socialize, and not easy to socialize like specifically with that, like maybe that culture or that community that you're like, I just want to maybe like check it out or see what this event's about.
And just learn about opportunities too. I mean, because personally, I didn't even know, I've only had my Hungarian citizenship for maybe going on 5 years now. Prior to that, I had zero knowledge that that was even an option for two reasons. Probably because I just never investigated that as an option. And two, I mean, who even knew that? Who even knew that was like a thing? Like I never heard anybody talk about it. And my son plays for the Hungarian lacrosse team. And as things developed, it was brought to our attention that like, oh yeah, like you could get your Hungarian citizenship. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? What? Are you kidding me? Really? And I didn't know. So just the fact that like being with people, meeting new people that have Hungarian heritage. You get more information about opportunities, and not just in the Hungarian community, but it could be beneficial for business as well. I mean, getting together, like who does what, like how can I help you? How can you help me? And vice versa. Like, I think it's going to be a big thing. And I think there's going to be a lot of interest in it.
Agree. I'm very excited. And it all starts with, like you said, one person. So I think it's going to be really great. And I'm really, really excited. So
yeah, same here. And I feel like it does start with one person, but it also starts with other people being excited about it, like yourself, because that's how we met over social media. So it's other people saying, hey, like, that's pretty cool. How can we talk more about this? And it's like a good virus, I guess, that we're spreading. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add about your Hungarian heritage or any experience that you've had?
No, I mean, I think we covered, depending on how many more hours we have.
Exactly. Right.
But I think we covered all of the bases. And I mean, I'm excited. I feel like every episode so far has been like one piece of that, like DNA that you're building. And
I appreciate that. Thank you for saying that.
Every guest and story has been so interesting. And I'm like, these are Hungarian people. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So I think making more of these connections and opportunities.
Yeah. There are a lot of cool Hungarians out there doing pretty cool things. Some of them super traditional, and some of them, more modern and more popular. And that's the goal, not to sound cheesy, to bridge those connections, of all these circles. But I think this is a good path that we've started. So I'm excited for it. I'm so happy that you were able to take the time today to be on the podcast. And I look forward to more times that we have to talk, maybe in a future podcast as well. And thanks for sharing your personal experience. And I think a lot of people will be inspired by it. They might be in the same position as you. And maybe people will be inspired who have never connected to their Hungarian community before. You have given them a lot of inspiration and things to think about too, of maybe reaching out and joining this community that we're building and this future get together that we're planning.
I hope so. I really hope so. And I really appreciate you having me and just allowing me to kind of share the little piece of what it's like being a Hungarian. And I'm excited for what the future holds, and hopefully meeting you and some of the others.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've already promised a little meetup to my interviewees from Hungary. So I feel like that's definitely something that I want to start here as well, because, it would be nice to connect personally with the people that I've interviewed, if possible, if location allows people to make that happen. The US is a lot bigger country than Hungary geographically. Yeah. So I know all of my Hungarian guests are excited for the next time that we travel to Hungary to have like a little get together. And I think that's how this will start too. We'll have some of our...
we have to start the Hungarian calendar and put it all on there. So
no, I think it's perfect. I think that's what we're going to do. So many ideas. I feel like we could keep talking for like hours, but lots to digest. But thank you so much. This was great. I loved hearing about your story. And thanks for being here today on the podcast, Bianca.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks, you too. Thanks for listening to this episode about Bianca's Hungarian American experience. And I hope that her words have inspired you to take a chance and look to make your connection back into your Hungarian community, or start looking where you can make your first connection to your Hungarian heritage. Oh, and did you hear about the special event that we will be planning for the near future? Stay tuned to the podcast and my social media for more information about that event coming up in the near future. Thanks to my audio editor, Tori Irvin, for working her audio magic on this episode. Our theme music is Hungarian Dance by Pony Music, used with a special license from Envato Market. Thanks again for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts so we can continue to connect our modern lives with our Hungarian heritage. Until next time, goodbye everyone. Sziasztok mindenkinek!